Blog Talk Radio.
Good afternoon or evening, living beneficiaries. This is your host, Rick Hidalgo. This is the Hidalgo radio show at the House of Hidalgo. And I am very excited this evening to bring you the second portion of a lecture, if you will, that we started just a few weeks ago. With Dr. Klebs. We'll get into that in just a moment. I want to first let you know where you can find us on the web. You can go to www.blogtalkradio.com/South Dakota DP. That's like double play, so South Dakota DP. Or you can go to www.therockofsalem.org. That is our official homepage. So you'll be able to go on there and subscribe to the newsletter, check out the blogs, listen to archive calls all the way back to the very first call that I did. So you guys can check all that stuff out anytime at www.therockofsalem.org. But without any further ado, I want to bring on our guest this evening. We have another opportunity to hear Dr. Klebs, Dr. Paul Klebs here in South Dakota. He is a naturopathic doctor slash teacher slash lecturer. He's very motivational. I've experienced some of that already. I've come back and listened to the show that we did earlier about 6 or 7 times just to try to grasp it all. A lot of great content. I'd encourage you to do the same. Tonight we're going to continue the series. The number one reason for dis-ease. Dr. Klebs, are you with us?
Yes, I'm right here.
I'm really glad that you are. Thank you for joining us again, and I look forward to hearing more about this number one reason for dis-ease. And I think tonight we're going to talk a little bit about digestion. You led into that a little bit last week, but I'll let you go ahead and recap for us if you'd like.
Yes, most of dis-ease, and that would be my terminology for when the body's not at ease. Some people will call it disease, but I actually put it back to so you understand the body is not happy and it's not at ease. So the last time we covered the origin of nearly every dis-ease is not enough water. We're a society that has been given bad tasting water because of some kind of filter. Whether it's because of trying to protect from pesticides or herbicides or protect from bacteria, we've been given water that tastes terrible. And so then water that tastes terrible, they cover up with sugar, and they call it soda pop or a sport drink or something like that. And so most everybody doesn't drink enough water. And we covered that the cause for nearly every disease, especially I would suggest if you were to look at stroke victims, you'll find that prior to the stroke, they were shorting themselves on water. And it's not just about wrinkling or kidney pain or that, but I adhere to the fact that stroke victims are the side effect of dehydration. The water in the blood, if it's missing, the blood stacks up like rouleau. It's named after a French doctor that discovered it. They look like coins underneath a microscope instead of being individual, free to haul nutrition and energy to the organs of the body and the tissues of the body. So we covered last time the deficiency of water is the number one origin of dis-ease. Now, it's also one of the main reasons we have poor digestion, which segues directly into why we are ill in America. Poor digestion has many symptoms like cold hands, cold feet, and you've got GERDs, or fancy word for indigestion, and heartburn and things like that. You'll seldom find someone that's depressed that doesn't have poor digestion. In fact, I don't know that it's possible, because depression, for example, would be the body's protective mechanism to get you away from taking on more in society or more people, because you don't have enough energy because of poor digestion to even run your body, its main function, let alone put up with somebody that's giving you stress or just situations that are giving you stress. So quite often when you want to help someone to not have depression or anxiety or anger or issues to where they're taught that it's a drug deficiency, you would teach them, let's get your digestion in better shape. So that's what I wanted to focus on tonight, was some of the things we use for digestion. One of the things I would like to suggest, you can start even first time you hear this call, this conference, there's a thing called sequential eating. And it would be, you look at your plate, the meal, and you would put in the bottom of your stomach first the most liquid of what's on your plate, not the dry or not the harsh, like a big piece of meat. You would look for something that's liquid so that there's something already waiting when you chew the other food so it can start to mix itself. It's not like a cement mixer. It sits there and bubbles and boils with the hydrochloric acid, if you have enough, with the liquid, so that it can then digest the food. So sequential eating alone is enough to help some people to get a better digestion happening. In 1968, a pharmacist was toying with me because he knew that I was into natural herbs and understanding how they work with the body. My dad was an herbalist, my grandpa was an herbalist, and so we just automatically were taught that if there's a problem in the home with someone, whether it's a headache or cold or flu or whatever, you automatically would look at what's natural instead of look what's an interference or an interruption with the mentality of we have to kill everything. And clear back then, what I was studying, especially some of the female issues that were happening to some of my classmates. And so the pharmacist knew that I was buying herbs from his own pharmacy. He held up a little pill and he said, if America ever finds out about this little pill, there'll be very few hospitals needed. And he was exactly right. I said, well, what is it? He said, you can't afford it. And I said, why not? Well, this pill's $3 a pill, but over there on the other side of the counter, they're $5 a bottle. And so he instructed me what to use it for. And so I tried it on myself, and I tried it on different people who would listen. And sure enough, especially cold hands, cold feet, sometimes in the very, very same few minutes within with just one hydrochloric tablet, which what we're talking about, the body would heal. Well, then people would challenge me at my young age. I was in high school at the time. Well, if I have acid indigestion, why would I take an acid? And that still is one of the questions I get asked when I recommend somebody give it a try. The acid that overpowers all of the acids that you're burping up is hydrochloric acid, but if you do not have enough of it, you're going to be in challenge mode. Most of us can remember at teenage years or maybe in clear into the 20s, we could get away with almost anything. We could eat some pastries, we could eat some sugar, we could even eat some red meat and get away with it. And all of a sudden, something would trip. And it's like you couldn't go back to the health you had before. Well, it's because you'd used up enough of the hydrochloric acid in your body that you no longer could digest the food. Now, to lose the hydrochloric acid would be, like I had mentioned, something of sugar source, cooked food, red meat, medications, and probably the worst offender. If you drink 1 can of soda pop of certain brands, you're going to need to put in 40 equal portions of alkaline drinking water to neutralize the damage from 1 can of pop. So if you're hooked on the sugar and the acid that's happening because the pH of most soda pop is less than 2 on a pH scale, and anything below 7 is acidic, and above 7 is alkaline. So we're a long ways from trying to protect the body when we start to do something that's highly acidic. The hydrochloric acid is what the body is missing when it's having indigestion and having all kinds of cognitive issues, and usually they'll have trouble with circulation. So when we put in hydrochloric acid, we now are starting to build back what we lost. Now, that's not the only thing that replaces our hydrochloric acid. In fact, we used to have pickled everything, pickled before refrigerators, and the vinegar from the pickling was how the body would then build its own hydrochloric base. The favorite that we use, you can get at some grocery stores. I recommend you get it from somebody that makes your own homemade pickles. But dill pickles is one of my favorites because you've got the foundation to build your own hydrochloric acid naturally without having to supplement. And the reason for that is NaCl, which is a salt in dill pickles, is part of the foundation for making your own hydrochloric. The other part of the dill pickles, what I like, is the vinegar, and hopefully there's dill weed in there, and the tincture from the pickles, and some garlic, and so it's like a natural medicine chest, if you want to use the word medicine, although the word medicine means to drug. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if anybody puts drugs of any kind into their dill pickles. But that's what we use quite often if people can't find hydrochloric acid. And they say, well, do I have to get it from a store? I say, well, that would be my last choice, but it's better than not doing it because they have a lot of dye in the pickles and other, but it still works. My favorite is somebody that uses gray salt, and we'll cover that in the future. Mm-hmm. But any salt that's white you don't want to deal with. You want to get salt that actually is full of minerals. We have this, seem to have a fear of anything that's not bleached is not healthy, when in fact everything that is been adulterated, improved on by man, is usually a disappointment, because God's program would be salt from the ocean that's gray and many different minerals in it. And once man gets on bleaching it, he's left with only a couple minerals, and then they add back ground up aluminum as an anti-caking agent, which makes it so that it's very dangerous for people to take salt. They get swollen up or get water retention because of the powdered aluminum, not because of the salt. The people that have figured this thing out, and we don't have to argue with anybody about it. Once we get people on real salt that's gray, it looks dirty, that salt actually begins to mend the body in every area, and we don't have to try to talk them out of doing enough salt. So I've heard everywhere from a quarter teaspoon a day to 1.5 teaspoons a day of real salt if you want to reverse heart disease. And I was privy to meet one of the top cardiologists in the world. He helped Ronald Reagan get over colon cancer when he was president of the United States. And he showed me x-ray after x-ray where he had taken and helped people with triple-sized hearts shrunk to normal in 2 weeks, and fifth-sized aneurysms cleaned up in 2 weeks. And here's what he told me. He says, if you cut salt out of your life, you will have heart disease. Now, just recently on the news, even the Western medicine model is starting to recognize that if you don't have enough salt, you're going to have all kinds of harmful side effects. And they're changing their policy, even though they don't understand the difference between perverted white salt and salt that the body was designed for. That's one of the reasons. The salt in the dill pickle juice is one of my favorite things to do. But when it comes to digestion, that's only one of the 5 things that I'm going to discuss how to get your digestion on track.
And before you go on to those, Dr. Klebs, if I might just break in for a second, I'm going to instruct that if people want to call in, they can call at 619-639-4605. That's 619-639-4605. Or there is a chat room established on the bottom of the page at blogtalkradio.com/South Dakota DP. If you get on that chat room, you can ask your questions as well. Dr. Klebs, something came up in my head as you were going through that. I have a child who's 17 years old, and his favorite thing to do when he's done with the pickles is to drink the juice. and you know, we've always gotten onto him for that, actually, because you know we were raised thinking that there's too much salt, there's too much, it's just bad for you. And so that's just another example of this upside down paradigm that we live in. So,
yeah, I started to write a book, What Do You Know That Isn't So? And that fits in the category of that because I'm not trying to argue with science. Science is their model is what they've been taught in the school last generation or two. We are taking stuff that works on the human, and by observation, we're doing our own research, so it's not probably going to match with what most people are hearing on the media, but it's time that people learn what works. And the thing about the truth, it feels well in the body, like with your son when he drinks that dill pickle juice. Nobody's telling him to do that. It just feels right. He's listening to his own sack of cells, so to speak. And people will say, well, how much do I drink? They say, till it doesn't taste good. Yeah, but how many ounces is that? Till it doesn't taste good. We've almost lost permission to listen with our innate intelligence of our own body because we're so used to having a prescription that tells you how many pills to take or nutritional supplements told how many to take a day. There's a lot of need for people to listen to their body like your son's doing, and I can almost guess without even talking to you about it, he will be a healthier person because he's listening. The 5 things that it takes to have a good digestion, the first one costs nothing, and it's you chew your food. If you look at, next time you look at a shovel full of food or a fork full of food, you can see it from across the room. It's so huge. Now, before the body cells get fed, it has to be so well broke down, like a grinder and a farm feed, making it smaller, like even making it microscopically, like talcum powder, and it has to get smaller yet. If there's something missing in the digestion, it won't be taken from huge native eyes can see it to where it's so microscopic you can hardly find it underneath a microscope, a high-power microscope. So here's what's necessary. You have to first break the size down by chewing food. And Americans, a lot of them just wolf it down. They inhale it. Then the stomach has to take big chunks and try to make it small enough to feed you. And some people don't think they have time to chew their food. So they spend a lot of time missing work because they're ill, or they just don't have a cognitive that they need to make good decisions.
Right.
The second thing, the body has to have enough hydrochloric acid, so we've covered that already. The third thing is the food has to be laden with enzymes so it can digest itself by laying on your counter or by wherever you would put it. So if it's been cooked, the enzymes are killed. We call the green beans in the can the former rubberized cadaver of a green bean. You can leave it set for 2 weeks on your counter, sniff it, and it's still good to go. So if you were to look at most of your lifestyle, if you're not eating raw food, which is laden with enzymes, now you're going to have to supplement enzymes. You don't have an option if you don't have the supplements, you just get sicker and sicker and less energy, and you feel bloated. And the body's actually being starved, and so then you eat more than you should, and the fat begins to accumulate, and we get an obese America. So enzymes would be the next thing. You pay attention to what you're putting on your plate and what you're eating. Now, after the enzymes, to break it down further, you have to have friendly bacteria. They're called probiotics or probiotics, bio meaning life. Probiotics have to take and nibble what the enzymes broke down to turn it into microscopic form and size so the cells can handle it. Now here's the challenge we have with most of America. There's pro-life and there's anti-life, against life. There's for life and there's against life. The anti-bio, the anti-life, antibiotics break down the friendly bacteria as well as the unfriendly. Now, I can understand why you'd take antibiotics if you're sick, because you get an effect in a short period of time, and sometimes it saves people's lives. But the trouble of it is, if you don't put back life, probiotics, you're going to find yourself either constipated, which means you're not getting fed, the food's not being broke down, and so we can make ourselves very toxic and very ill. Some estimates are as low as 200 different friendly bacteria when you nurse from mother. I suspect it's more like a couple thousand, but I'm going to be very conservative. Let's suppose you take an antibiotic and you knock out 200 strains of friendly bacteria and you have a gut that's basically just dead. And people say, well, you have to take a probiotic, so they take acidophilus. And that's going to help? Well, it does help a little bit. That's how insufficient we are. But it's one of 200. So then you say Bifidobacillus. Oh, now we got 2 of 200. We still got 180 or 198 to go. I don't know exactly how many. The count has not been established. But let's suppose that you only had 50, and you knock all of them out. I don't know yet of 50 probiotics that you can buy at a health food store to put back just that. So what happens if you don't have enough friendly bacteria, the unfriendly bacteria take over, and then you've got spastic bowels and you have all sorts of problems with the colon and digestion and depression and things of that nature. Now, there's still more than just probiotics. Now, I recommend if you had to find a probiotic, the best source that I know of would be finding somebody's goat that just gave birth and get goat colostrum. Now, the reason goat colostrum would work better than cow colostrum is it's designed for an animal with one stomach. And most Americans, some look like they have more than one stomach, but most Americans, I know, have one stomach. They don't have 4 stomachs to break down cow's milk. And cow's colostrum is not as harsh on a one-stomach body as the milk is, but it's just common sense. We would want goat milk or goat colostrum. But once it's been pasteurized, guess what we did? We killed all these friendly bacteria, and so now you're only getting a wimpy mix left of some that managed to survive. And so you won't have the benefit as if you could have gotten it from fresh from a goat or from even a cow's colostrum. There's friendly bacteria there. You're not going to be fortunate enough probably to get mother's milk again, because now that you're an adult or an older child and someone gives you antibiotics, how are you supposed to recover? So the key challenge is to keep looking and trying different companies and mixing different companies so that you can build your own friendly bacteria. But here is a real key. If there's anything that I've discovered that is very, very important, it's we have to have fiber. Now, there is a certain fiber that is so compatible with probiotics, with friendly bacteria, that if you can find a probiotic that has FOS in it, and it'll be marked, which stands for fructooligosaccharides. It's a fiber that's a sugar that causes tremendous increase in the friendly bacteria so that you end up getting a good stool. In the farming community, when the unfriendly bacteria takes over on a newborn calf, they call it scours. And to save that calf, you have to either give it antibiotics to kill off the unfriendly and hope it didn't kill too many of the friendlies to save the calf's life. If you just give them a probiotic in a capsule form with FOS in it, you save the calf. Now, a bottle of probiotics is usually about 90 pills in a bottle. It'll be anywhere from 20 to maybe low end $20 to $30. And 2 capsules would all it would be necessary to save a calf from scours. So at $100 a calf, that $30 bottle is worth $4,500. But if it isn't prescribed by a licensed vet, the calf gets to die or suffer from antibiotic abuse. Now here's what happens when you have enough fiber, friendly bacteria, the food's got enzymes in it, you have enough hydrochloric acid to break it down so that it can get into the cells. You have what we call a perfect stool. And a perfect stool is your way, just like the vet. If you call up a vet to see your animal, especially a horse or some kind of a large animal, and the vet wants to know what's going on with that animal, he will tell you before you even see him at your place to isolate the animal. Now, that's not so he doesn't have to chase out in the pasture. That might be part of it, but that's so he can see that isolate the stool that comes from that animal is how you can figure out what's going on between intake and exhaust. And if they ask you what you're eating and about your stool, you've got an old vet or a vet that's been educated in the ways of natural instead of the way of chemicals. If your whatever that's a vet or doctor of any type that's concerned about what's going on in your body doesn't ask you about what's going in and how it's coming out, how would they have a clue what's going on in between? So what I'm sharing tonight is the basic foundation of how to tell if your body is digesting. So here's a perfect stool. In our home, we celebrate a good stool. In fact, sometimes we have competition. Honey, come here, see what I just gave birth to. And here's what the one to brag about looks like. Light to medium brown. Comes out easy. If I see magazine rack sitting beside the stool, I know we got somebody with bowel troubles in the house. It holds together, tapered at least to one end, doesn't autograph the toilet when you flush. So the next time you flush, and if you're too scared to look at it, but it left a streak, you know that there's something wrong with your digestion, and you need to go back and look at what you did or didn't eat yesterday and get busy about what I've shared with you so far.
Huh.
And I know we're taught to not talk about anything about the body, what comes out of the body, but if you're a vet, a good vet, you will look at the stool. There is one more thing I must share about how we can tell if the body's been fed. And it's something that just common sense I discovered about 5-6 years ago, and I must share it with you. If you ever play with water, tap water, like I did back in country school, I did all kinds of experiments that I wasn't given permission to do and I got punished for it, but it was more fun than punishment sometimes than sitting just bored in the desk. I would take water, and it always amazed me. I could take a pencil or a paper. I used to take a paper clip and open it up, and I could touch that water, and somehow that water would jump up to the paper clip, and then I could lift it up, and it would let loose after I had raised the paper clip off from the desk. Sometimes almost immeasurable with a tape measure. It's got a surface, and that's called surface tension. A scientist would understand what I'm talking about, but the surface tension is how much tension does it take to break through the surface of the liquid. Now, tap water is about 78 dynes, D-Y-N-E-S, and they have an actual calibrated machine that can tell the surface tension of liquid. And so if you've ever cooked fake potatoes or cornstarch, and you took cold water, which has a surface tension of about 78, and try to get it to absorb and mix in, you're going to get lumps in your powder, and you're going to have fake mashed potatoes that are lumpy. So what do? You boil the water, and that changes the surface tension, so it's wetter, and the wet water will absorb into all the molecules and make it very creamy with no lumps. Now, that would be in the 60s. Now, the gatekeeper to make sure that nothing gets into the cells is 45 dynes, approximately 45 dynes or less. So what happens, some people drink a gallon, 2 gallons of water a day, and they're always thirsty and they don't have vitality. It's because they don't have enough hydrochloric acid in their stomach to break down the surface tension to 45 dynes, not just the food, but also the water they're drinking. Most of us have been told by somebody in the natural health world, well, don't drink water with your meal because it dilutes the mix so you can't digest it. Well, they're correct. Because if you have enough hydrochloric acid to digest your food to 45 dynes, and then you dump a bunch of 78 dyne water on top of it, you just made it so that food can't even get into the cells and feed you. So the surface tension has to be brought to 45 dynes or less. That's one of God's programs, I'm convinced, so that the cells can be fed. So here's what happens to the humans in North America. They're doing everything wrong as far as the surface tension. They don't have hydrochloric acid. You tell them at a restaurant to not bring water, and you say you don't want anything, they'll bring you water anyhow. Our society is built that way. That there's certain things that are just public policy, and we have to do it or we're going to make somebody look bad. Well, the truth of it is, if they do not have enough hydrochloric acid, they're not going to get it broke down even with or without water, and so they're constantly thirsty. And what does get into the cells is everything you don't want to get in the cell, because almost everything petroleum, whether it's a food preservative, pesticide, herbicide, cologne, perfume, laundry detergent, anything that has a smell to it that's made from a petroleum barrel, when that gets in the human's body or on the body, there's no protection to keep it out of the cells because its surface tension is way less than 20. There is no gatekeeper on the cells to stop the poison from becoming the majority of what is feeding the cell instead of the food. Now, the reason I can talk like this, we put people on a cleanse. They choose, they can order it and take it home, or they can order it off the internet. They get on a cleanse that is so nutrient dense, and it feeds the cells with enough nutrition that it starts to squeeze the toxic poisons out of the cell. In fact, usually by second day or third day, they start to have what some people call a Herxheimer's reaction, which is a fancy word for the body starting to heal and is kicking out some reactions. As that poison starts to come out of the body, they may get a headache, they may be lethargic, they may find themselves wanting to stay in bed the whole day, and we encourage them to take the day off, because the next day they're going to start to like us, and by the day 4, usually they want to hug your neck. They haven't felt that good in years. Well, why is that? They got rid of the poison they've been hauling around for years because it's going right into the cells. It's about surface tension. This particular cleanse has been around since 1946, pulling off the miracles. You don't need me. You need the cleanse. And you go 7 days to 10 days, and you don't feed yourself food, but you're fed every hour and a half, and so the body doesn't get to starve at all. And in that process, we get to see the benefit. Now, when it comes to building back the body, sometimes we need some supplements to help speed up the healing process, but the body heals itself. It's not a deficiency of a drug. It's a deficiency of water, deficiency of hydrochloric acid and enzymes and friendly bacteria, and now the body starts to mend itself.
Wow. Wow, this is just fascinating stuff. I'm just sitting here taking notes as fast as I can because, I find myself really not wanting to interject. I want you to just kind of keep going. So Dr. Klebs, what should I even ask the question? Normally when I ask this question, you say whatever you can afford. But what is there a specific probiotic that's better than another probiotic, or what do you suggest? What's your suggestion?
I look for the FOS to be part of the program, because then I know the friendly bacteria is not going to be wasted. And if you can find FOS by itself, there is one company that sells it. That's not the way I do it, but if you could get some FOS, it would enhance anybody's probiotic. FOS, I have a nickname for it because, like with the calves with scours, people don't remember fructooligosaccharides. They couldn't spell it if they could remember it.
Right.
And that's FOS is what you're looking for. But I tease that you want your body to be healthy, full of good fecal matter. So I just call it full of shizit.
Oh, I love your humor. Last time we were on a call, you alluded to GMO and you said, "God, move over."
Yeah.
I love it. It's easy to remember this stuff. So okay, that's noted. We'll be looking for FOS in our probiotics in the future.
Anybody that puts the probiotics together, I recommend try to put it with it, because your company will do better with that probiotic. There's the one challenge with probiotics is they're very unstable, and I would strongly recommend anybody that has probiotic with them not to leave it on the dash in the summertime or any place where it's going to get hot. Your refrigerator is a much better place for your probiotic. There are some good probiotics that are only sold and kept in the refrigerator from the time you buy them until you take them and you put them back in the fridge. Those are good, but again, they're just all different strains. No two companies that I've ever seen have the same source of even acidophilus or bifidophilus. So I would mix around and try different companies. Just get the FOS so that everybody benefits.
There is a question that just came off of Facebook for you, Dr. Klebs. I wonder, could you answer this? A lot of people have heard that a good source of acidophilus and a lot of these probiotics is yogurt. Is there a certain kind of yogurt?
I agree. In fact, if you can have your own home-cultured yogurt and try different flavors with it so that you start to get a different mix and the friendly bacteria starts to make combinations that wouldn't be just from straight yogurt. But if you understand the whole pasteurization system is to kill bacteria so that you have shelf life. And I'll come back to pasteurization in just a bit. But I like yogurt if it's raw and you cultured it yourself. There's a new one on the market from a company called Beyond Organics, called Amasi. We love it, even though he has to pasteurize. We're seeing better results with that than some of the even homegrown stuff. Mm-hmm. But the whole theory, the whole confusion of how to get people healed goes clear back to the 1800s. There was a doctor, Antoine Béchamp is his name, that was doing so well getting people over dis-ease, and he understood that if your terrain is off, your body is ill. And he was going to speak to a bunch of doctors about and share his good news, and they introduced another doctor that got everybody sidetracked, focusing on the germ is going to get you, not the terrain. The terrain is not the picture, it's the germ. And so on the hero that the media attached themselves to was Louis Pasteur, which is where the word pasteurization comes from. So if you want to make money on a product, you have to kill the friendly bacteria as well as the unfriendly bacteria so you have shelf life. Well, if his germ theory was true, now this would be common sense conversation. If the germ theory was true, and your little son said, "Johnny, what are you going to be when you grow up?" And Johnny would say, "Oh, I want to be a doctor." And then the parents would say, "Oh, no, Johnny, we want you to have a long life. We don't want you to work in the germ jail because you'll catch something. The germs are going to get you."
Right.
Okay? The truth of it is, it's the terrain. In fact, if you've got anybody inside your family, like we had a number of siblings, and one of them was very compromised at birth, and even his young life and even young adult life. And I lost track how many times he suffered food poisoning because he would eat somebody's potato salad at a reunion or a church picnic, and he'd get food poisoning. And so finally, he learned to leave potato salad alone. But the rest of us ate the same potato salad. We'd rub our stomachs, and no pain, no symptoms, no food poisoning for us. How come he had the food poisoning? Well, his body was so acidic that his terrain was off, and the extra bacteria from the potato salad was enough to tip him over and to get into trouble. Just like if you had a hamburger or a restaurant establishment that had maybe 3,000 patrons in a day, and 10 to 20, maybe even 30 of them became ill, they'd want to shut it down. Well, why did they have the questionable food that would trigger only 30, maybe 1% of the whole population that came that day? It's because the terrain is off. And when the terrain is off, God's program is to multiply germs or have germs show up to make sure that the weak, the survival of the fittest is taken, so there's balance and all of the creation. Let me give you an indicator. And when we'd watch my brother, we'd hardly know there's mosquitoes out because the sunshine is pretty warm and it's maybe a light wind. He'd be swatting like crazy. The parasites of the earth were chasing after the stagnant pond. In the springtime, if you take the pH of rainwater and look under a microscope, it's boring because it's alkaline. But let that set in the tire for a while, let it set in the puddle for a while, let it get pretty warm, and now there's all kinds of larvae and every kind of squiggly thing you can imagine underneath the microscope. It looks like somebody having fun on a drawing board making crazy looking things. Now, the stagnant pond is the only provision for these parasites to multiply their own kind. So if you're getting bit by mosquitoes or wood ticks bite you, if your pH is balanced, they'll crawl on you because they got lucky enough to be picked up by you, but seldom will they bite. And pay attention to where they do bite, because the wood tick is got its radar going looking for that stagnant spot on your skin that matches with the DNA of what they're supposed to do on planet Earth. They're not a mistake by God. They're part of the whole program for survival of the fittest to still carry on his creation.
Right. Right. Well, this is fantastic stuff. So I don't know if you noticed, but in the news here a few days ago, that did you see those man-made mosquitoes that are been unleashed in the Everglades out there?
No, I don't have what I call electronic cesspool. Sorry to pick on you, but I try to value my time enough so that I don't have somebody putting mush in my brain and get me into fear about a lot of things. I'm not suggesting that we all do that, but I like to be very selective of what comes into my home, and we don't even have TV.
And you're wise for it, but I was just sharing a story. They got mosquitoes probably the size of a good German cockroach flying around down in South Florida, and it's likely a genetic experiment gone awry or something. But anyway, it was just you were talking about pestilence, so I decided to just throw that in there. But so when summertime comes and the mosquitoes are really out thick, and they're really coming at you. Are you needing to pay attention to where it is they bite you? I mean, are they got that little radar thing going too?
I suspect that if you were to do a real close analysis of where, especially the wood tick, latches on, there'd be some correlation to some organ and the meridians for you to understand which organs are in trouble. I don't use that as a tool to figure out what's so much as the fact that the body's pH is out of balance. And if we know you're acidic, and you probably already know because you've got either the heartburn or the funny smelling sweat, or there's something telling you that your body's acidic, all pain will come under the category of acidosis. In other words, you have too much acid in a certain area. And I say pain is acid, acid is pain. So you've got so many ways to find out if you're acidic, not just the pests, but the symptoms of the body. We just alkalize and we watch the things disappear. Things, whether it's pain or whether it's the affinity for mosquitoes to like you better than everybody else in the community. I'm not saying that if they chase you down and bite you that you're in trouble.
Sure.
But the people that are just harassed way beyond normal are the ones that you pay much first attention to. And I can tell you, if you pay attention to your eating habits when you're sitting with someone, especially if it's inside of a family, have you ever heard that saying, well, you eat like a bird?
Yeah.
And I say, well, don't hurt them. They don't have enough friendly bacteria to digest even a portion of the meal they just took. Don't force them to make themselves sick, because if you don't have enough probiotics in your body, then they say the average male in American size would be around 4 pounds of friendly bacteria. Some of the females would be 3.5 pounds. But I have found some people that are suffering with the bird, you eat like a bird, they are always the ones that are harassed by bugs. We get sick really easy, pick up on any kind of colds or flus or something going through the community.
Sure.
And so if they don't like to sit and eat like a normal person, you get them the probiotics and the FOS. You don't have to have some kind of degree to figure out that they don't have enough probiotics. In fact, if by the time you're waiting for a test to come back, you could have bought a bottle of probiotics and they already had the problem on the mend before they can even get their test back. So it's not like it's going to take a scientist to figure this out. Just try it. What's the worst that could happen? Oh, you get expensive urine?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I tend to get a little sarcastic sometimes.
Well, that's all right. I appreciate your sarcasm. Dr. Klebs, when you're talking about pain being a signal that you're highly acidic, say someone's having, something that, like, for instance, a chest pain, okay, where they might be afraid that they might be having some other problems. Is even a chest pain pointing to the fact that they're too acidic?
I use pain as a messenger.
Right.
Pain tells you that there's something that the body's not happy with. I remember years ago we had a gentleman that had a lot of pain around his heart, and I'm not suggesting you don't go in for a check, but when he go in for a check, they gave him a clean bill of health as far as his heart was concerned, and I'm thankful for that. So there's times when you just listen to the messenger and do everything you can so you can further understand it. But what was happening with his challenge, there's a sac, a pericardium sac, I think they call it, and he was short on some minerals, so that was like having a cramp, and it caused serious claustrophobia. And he had discovered from another naturopath to take gray salt, just the opposite of what we're taught in this country. And that was the minerals necessary to help him. Now, I'm not going to say that's going to get rid of every pain, and I wouldn't even want you to just try salt instead of going down and have
Sure.
yourself checked. But a lot of the stuff can be misread because it's in a certain area. One of the indicators that really gets people's attention is when they have a gallbladder attack. Now, I don't like that word because I don't think any body part attacks itself. But when it has a pain messenger so severe, it will let you know. That is quite often because your bile ducts are having problems with stones. And the gall sac is for gall. It's not for stones. It's not a stone sac. And the misunderstanding of the whole gallbladder thing we might cover in another segment, but we've encouraged many people while they're waiting for their to figure out what the pain is, just do a liver gallbladder flush, and you can find that on the internet. And it might set you back about $6 for 4 lemons and some olive oil, but it sure beats the heck out of suffering needlessly and then the body passes its own stones. And can't hurt, could help.
That's actually my favorite salad dressing, to be honest with you. Lemons, olive oil, and some Himalayan salt. That's my...
So you won't get to experience a gallbladder attack. You're going to have to learn about it from somebody else.
So on the note of salt, let's have a little discussion about salt here, because good friend of mine who's also a friend of yours turned me on to that gray salt that you're talking about. And I noticed, and I'm going to just give this out for anybody who's listening, if you want to look for this gray salt, if you go to an animal feed store, they got them in like 50-pound bags for $5. It's really, really cheap and efficient stuff. Is that the same stuff we're talking about, Dr. Klebs?
Well, I think there's going to be more than one source of that. I look at God's sense of humor, and He hasn't left any part of the world without sea salt. You know, when you look at salt and people say, well, I take sea salt, I say, what color is it? Oh, you've got bleached sea salt. It's white, used to be some different color. And there's different shades of salt, but you want to get salt that is still alive with enzymes. What I mean by that, if the salt that you're getting can cake back up into a lump by itself, and hopefully they haven't added anti-caking agents to it, which would be ground up aluminum. See, for inconvenience, we've gone away from real flour and real salt and real product because it was inconvenient to have to stab it with a fork just to get a little bit for us to have on our plate.
Right.
Now, this is harsh, but there's no life insurance on animals. And the problem with if you use a poison salt to your animals, you're going to have some side effects you may not be able to convince the farmer to continue on if he loses his livelihood. And so if there was life insurance on animals, we could feed them like we do in American. But the bleached salt it's basically dead salt. It's got enough to give a little bit of flavor. But when you find the real salt, whether it's from Himalayas or France or from a source inside the United States that still has color to it, it is so salty that for what you would put in a quarter teaspoon, that's enough to make everybody wonder if you put MSG in there, which is a perverted salt. A perverted salt, but it makes, and that's another whole issue. But the gray salt is pretty readily, and I think every country has it. They just, if they haven't gone through the hoops to get it approved or passed by so-called authorities, they're probably shy and wouldn't even want you to share that it's for animals. I tell people if there's a starvation situation and you're going through the grocery store and there's nothing left on the shelves because somebody grabbed the Twinkies and the Hostos and the donuts and all the quick-to-eat stuff, the most nutritional food in most grocery stores today is cat food and dog food. And if you don't believe me, look at the listing on the ingredients, and you could help a lot of people survive a bad storm, bad weather, whatever. If you run out of food, but there's still dog food or cat food, there's nobody who's going to allow the processing and producing of product that's going to hurt animals.
How sad is that?
Well, it's just the
wow.
way it is. I mean,
oh, so Dr. Klebs, continuing on the salt discussion a little bit, one of the things that everybody tells you is, the reason why you buy the iodized salt is because you need the iodine, and so you get a lot of this rhetoric getting pumped into you out there. What say you on that?
Okay, sea salt comes from the sea. What grows in the sea? All kinds of kelp and seaweed, which is just full of iodine. Now, if you don't bleach the iodine out of it, you won't have to add back the iodine. And we all need to have a balance. And I suspect that most of the sea salt that's gray is going to have 80 or more different trace minerals, that some say as high as 92. But included in that will be a natural source and natural balance of iodine from the ocean. So by taking away all the nutrition and then adding back iodine, it would be like saying, in the North Country, we're going to really benefit your life. We've got this additive for your life. We're going to take all your clothes, but we're not going to leave you without. You can run around in the snow in this clear cellophane underwear that we're going to give you, and we've enriched and enhanced your life. It'd be like taking and wrecking salt, and then adding back something synthetic and calling it iodized salt.
Wow. Well, I appreciate that picture. I made it quite clear. It's kind of like the emperor's new clothes.
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate you debunking that. I also, let's see, I was going to ask something pertaining to, it was on the same thought here. You were talking about adding things back in, because we eat a lot of things like enriched rice, where they've basically and excuse my French, but they've bastardized the rice, and then they've added back something to it to enrich it. It seems like all our food is that way.
Well, it's a good selling point. Enriched would mean that you've taken something synthetic, usually from a petroleum barrel, made it look like, act like, smell like, taste like, feel like the real, but it's so cheap that you can get away with it. And the body actually sometimes is so depleted that it'll even accept a synthetic vitamin or synthetic additive with a bit of benefit because it's happy it's now finally thinks it's been fed, and then you pay the price of side effects. Most of what's been enriched is so depleted that you wouldn't want to buy it if they didn't make it a little bit of an improvement back, like the cellophane underwear. I can give you a good example. When I was raised, my mom would grind the wheat from the bin with a coffee grinder, and then she'd make flour. And for some special occasion, for some reason, she had this one drawer that you tip out. It had white flour in it, and my favorite thing was to take a sifter and sift out everything that hatched and everything that got hard. And it was not considered to be good to have weevils and worms in your muffin when you gave it to try to impress the neighbors with your gift to them. So later on, when I got
Go ahead.
Okay, when I got a job working in a flour mill, I asked them, how come we no longer have any weevils in the flour? How can you sell this white bread? We say whiter the bread, the quicker you're dead. How can you have this white flour and not have worms in it? Said, oh, well, we enrich it, and we put a poison in there that's so powerful that it kills, that pesticide kills the weevils before they get of size. And that's the enriched and bromated, improved white flour. It stays on the shelf for years and doesn't start. Any time you take a berry or a grain or a nut or a seed, and you break it open, if there's any parasites, the frequency's been lost of healthy, and the parasites have to hatch and do just like the mosquitoes do on a person that has a stagnant pond. It's no different even if you take and wreck the balance of the soil. God's program to heal the soil is called weeds. The dandelion is here because we have a magnesium deficiency. If you want dandelions to grow, you just put on some kind of lawn fertilizer, and now you've got 3 of the many different minerals.
Ignore that. It's only you and I that's hearing that. Go ahead.
Okay. And so if you want to have weeds grow, all you do is use some synthetic fertilizers, usually 3 or 4 if you're lucky. And now the weeds come like crazy. They're not a Roundup deficiency. They're a nutritional deficiency in the soil. And if you let, like the basic instructions before leaving Earth, some people call it the Bible, it talks about letting the land set fallow for years. My dad used to be part of that. It's a soil bank where you let it set for 7 years. And the first year you got a lot of weeds. Next year, not so many weeds. Pretty soon you're starting to get grass and not weeds. And pretty soon the deer just come like crazy to live on it. And when you finally turn it back to cropland, you've got such high nutrient-dense produce coming off of there. The Brix number, which is a sugar amount that feeds humans or feeds the animals so they're healthy. But all of this picture, a weed is only to germinate when necessary, to feed the soil, to heal the soil from the energy it encapsulates from the air and plants back into the soil when it dies. So everything is, whether it's weeds or parasites, those are indicators. They're not something to kill or something to be scared of or something to misunderstand.
Right.
That's God's balanced program. And the natural path, which I try to hang to, would be to follow God's wisdom. And some people will call it common sense. But they don't know that dandelions are brought to this country to keep us from having cancer. And dandelions are one of the most healing things you can have. But if you check the soil, it's out of balance, and the dandelions will put back magnesium to the soil.
And this is all really, really fascinating stuff, and I just can't wait till next week. And on that note, I just want to say to the listening audience that Dr. Klebs will be back next Friday night to continue this discussion on the next aspect of dis-ease. And Dr. Klebs, I was going to ask you something concerning cesium in the water based on Fukushima, but I think we'll continue that next week if you don't mind. We'll maybe get into that a little bit next week. But I just want to thank you for coming on and for being who you are, being out there and letting people know the truth unabashedly and unashamedly. And just thank you for who you are, Dr. Klebs.
Appreciate your approval and promoting.
So if you'd like to say what you usually say to wrap up, go ahead.
Ignore your health. It'll go away.
So for Dr. Klebs, this is Rick Hidalgo. This has been the House of Hidalgo show. It was great. God bless all, and good night.